66 million years ago, life on Earth was thriving. Dinosaurs had dominated the planet for over 150 million years. The oceans were full, the skies were full, the forests were full. Every ecological niche was occupied by something extraordinary. And then a rock arrived. Not a special rock, not an unusual rock by the standards of the solar system. A chunk of ancient stone and metal approximately 12 kilometers across, roughly the width of a city. It had been drifting through the solar system for billions of years, following an orbit that brought it closer and closer to an intersection with Earth's path. On that morning 66 million years ago, it hit the atmosphere at approximately 20 kilometers per second. The energy released in the impact was equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously. But what happened was not an explosion in the way we picture explosions. It was something far stranger, far more total, far more permanent. Before we go further, if this video makes you feel the weight of the moment you exist in, if the ground beneath you feels like the most unlikely gift in the solar system, hit that like button and subscribe to Cosmos Insight. Every subscriber helps us keep making these documentaries. Now let's go back 66 million years. The Chicxulub impactor, named for the crater it left beneath the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, struck at an angle. This detail matters more than almost anything else about the impact. The angle of entry was approximately 45 to 60 degrees, steep enough to penetrate deeply into the Earth's crust, steep enough to vaporize enormous quantities of sulfur-rich rock in the target zone, steep enough to inject that vaporized rock directly into the upper atmosphere at velocities that carried it across the entire planet within hours. If the angle had been shallower, say 20 to 30 degrees, most of the energy would have been deposited in the upper atmosphere. The rock would have skimmed across the sky like a stone across water. The devastation on the ground below the impact site would have been catastrophic locally. But the global consequences, the atmospheric injection of vaporized sulfur and dust that blocked the sun for years, would have been dramatically reduced. The angle was the difference between a regional catastrophe and a mass extinction, and the angle was essentially random. But here's what most people don't know about the impact. The location mattered just as much as the angle. The Yucatan Peninsula 66 million years ago was covered by a shallow tropical sea. Beneath that sea was a rock formation extraordinarily rich in sulfur-bearing minerals, anhydrite and gypsum. When the impactor hit this specific rock, it vaporized billions of tons of sulfur dioxide directly into the stratosphere. The sulfur dioxide combined with water to form sulfuric acid aerosols, tiny droplets suspended in the upper atmosphere that reflected sunlight back into space. The impact winter that followed was not primarily caused by dust. It was caused by sulfur, specifically by the sulfur in the rock beneath the Yucatan Sea. If the impactor had struck almost anywhere else on Earth, the open ocean, the continental interiors, the polar regions, the sulfur loading would have been dramatically lower. The impact winter would have been shorter, less severe, more survivable. Scientists have calculated that approximately 13% of Earth's surface at the time was covered by sulfur-rich rock formations of this type. The impactor had approximately an 87% chance of hitting somewhere that would not have produced the same catastrophic sulfur loading. 87%. Nearly 9 out of 10 possible impact locations would not have produced the extinction we know. And here is where everything changes. The timing. The Chicxulub impactor did not arrive on a random day. Or rather, it did arrive on a random day from the perspective of the rock. But that random day happened to be during the Northern Hemisphere spring. And this, scientists now believe, made an enormous difference to what survived and what did not. In the Northern Hemisphere spring, deciduous trees had just begun to produce new leaves. Their energy reserves were depleted after winter. When the impact winter began and photosynthesis failed across the globe, the deciduous trees of the Northern Hemisphere were in their most vulnerable state. They had just committed their energy reserves to new growth and had nothing left in reserve. In the southern hemisphere, it was autumn. The trees there were entering dormancy, their energy stored in roots and seeds, prepared physiologically for a period without sunlight. This is one of the reasons why more plant species survived in the southern hemisphere than the northern. The timing of the impact, spring in the north, hit the northern hemisphere's forests at their most vulnerable moment. If the impactor had arrived 6 months earlier or later, the seasonal vulnerability would have been reversed or eliminated. Different species would have survived. Different ecosystems would have recovered. The world that emerged from the extinction would have been different in ways we cannot fully predict. But that's still not the most extraordinary part. The mammals that survived the Chicxulub impact were small, underground dwellers, nocturnal, generalist feeders capable of surviving on insects, seeds, whatever remained in the darkened post-impact world. They survived not because they were superior to the dinosaurs. They survived because they were small enough to hide and flexible enough to eat almost anything. For 150 million years, mammals had existed in the shadow of the dinosaurs. Small, marginal, mostly nocturnal. The dinosaurs occupied every large ecological niche. There was no room for mammals to grow, diversify, expand. The ecological ceiling imposed by dinosaur dominance kept mammals small and specialized for 150 million years. The asteroid removed the ceiling. Within 10 million years of the impact, mammals had diversified into virtually every ecological niche the dinosaurs had vacated. Whales entered the ocean. Bats took to the air. Horses, elephants, primates, the entire mammalian diversity we know today, emerged from the survivors of that darkened, post-impact world. One of those survivors was the ancestor of every primate on Earth, a small, tree-dwelling, insect-eating creature that survived the impact winter in the forests of what is now Asia or Africa. From that single surviving lineage came monkeys, apes, and eventually, approximately 300,000 years ago, us. Your existence is a direct consequence of the angle at which a rock hit the atmosphere 66 million years ago. There is something about this that almost cannot be processed. The asteroid did not target the Yucatan. It did not choose the sulfur-rich rock. It did not arrive in spring. It did not spare the small mammals. All of these things happened because of orbital mechanics and geology and seasonal timing. Impersonal physical processes that had nothing to do with any outcome on the surface. The extinction was not inevitable. It was not a scheduled event in Earth's history. It was a low-probability collision that happened to occur at a specific angle, in a specific location, at a specific time of year, producing a specific set of consequences that wiped out the dominant life forms on the planet and opened the ecological space that allowed our ancestors to exist. If the asteroid had arrived at a shallower angle, it would have been a bad day in the Yucatan. The non-avian dinosaurs would have survived. The mammals would have remained small and nocturnal for another 100 million years, or forever. If it had hit the open ocean, the sulfur loading would have been a fraction of what it was. The impact winter would have been survivable for larger animals. The dinosaurs would have weathered it. If it had arrived in autumn in the northern hemisphere, the deciduous forests would have been dormant and better prepared. Different plant communities would have survived. The recovery ecology would have been different. In any of these scenarios, and there were dozens of ways the impact could have been less catastrophic, the non-avian dinosaurs survive. They continue to dominate the planet. The mammals remain in the margins. Primates never diversify into the ecological space they needed to develop intelligence. The species that would eventually become us never exists. Here is what stays with you. You are here because of a rock. A rock that had been drifting through the solar system for billions of years with no particular destination. A rock that intersected Earth's orbit at a specific point in time that was determined by orbital mechanics operating on billion-year timescales. A rock that hit at the right angle, in the right place, at the right time of year to produce the specific catastrophe that cleared the ecological space your ancestors needed to survive and eventually thrive. The improbability is staggering. Not that an asteroid hit Earth. Large impacts have happened throughout Earth's history. The improbability is in the specifics, the angle, the location, the timing, the combination of factors that made this particular impact, this particular extinction. And yet, here you are, every person who has ever lived, every civilization that has ever risen, every idea that has ever been thought, every piece of music ever composed, every book ever written, all of it flows from the survivors of that darkened post-impact world. All of it is the downstream consequence of small nocturnal mammals that found enough seeds and insects to survive a decade of impact winter. The ground beneath your feet was scraped clean 66 million years ago. The world you live in was built on the ruins of a different world, a world that had existed for 150 million years and was erased in geological microseconds by a rock that almost missed. Almost. Look up at the sky tonight. Somewhere up there, right now, rocks are drifting. Most of them will never intersect with anything. Some of them will. The solar system is not finished with Earth. The age of impacts is not over. But today, right now, the angle was right. The location was specific. The timing was what it was. And you are the result.